Don Mazzella here again for Small Business Digest. I've worked with a lot of PR firms over the years. One of the better ones is Uproar PR, and we're lucky to have the head of it, Catriona Harris, with us today. She, um, she wants to talk about PR and why it's important, and our focus groups all tell us that most of our audience still doesn't see the value of PR. So we'll get into that later on. But first, welcome to the program.
Thank you, and thanks for the kind words, Don.
Well, as we ask all our guests, first tell us a little bit about yourself personally, then about your company, and finally a website.
Yeah, you got it. So let's see. I grew up in California, and so I went to college out there at St. Mary's College of California, which is just east of San Francisco, and really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, probably like most early 20s. And I had a general communications degree. I had had some internships in TV, and my last semester of college, I took this really interesting course called public relations, and quickly realized that was where I wanted to go. And I was lucky enough, I got hired right out of college for an agency in San Francisco, doing a lot of consumer PR, working for some big national brands, and had a lot of fun doing that. The dot-com boom came. I found myself unemployed, found myself freelancing back in the TV news world. And that sort of helped me clarify that I did want to be back in public relations. And so found myself a job working in-house at a museum in Silicon Valley. So I got the opportunity to work at an agency, in-house, news, and really determined at that point in my life that agency world was the right path for me. I went on to work for a San Francisco agency, was able to grow with them and move to the East Coast to run their East Coast operations. And a few years later, decided I wanted to go out on my own. I was actually working with my husband, so we jumped off in 2011 and started Uproar. So having done a little bit of tech, a little bit of consumer, we decided to make Uproar a home for all. And so, Uproar is an agency that focuses on all different companies. People ask me a lot, what are the vertical markets you work in? There's really not a vertical market we don't hit. We just have different teams devoted so that they have the industry expertise. So we've got about 13 teams across the agency that focus on everything from the consumer brands you know and love on the restaurant world, to luggage, all the way up to enterprise technologies. So we hit on a little bit of everything. And the website is uproarpr.com.
Can you spell it out for our audience one time?
You got it. uproarpr.com.
I always ask that. How did you come up with that name?
We wrote down a bunch of adjectives of what we do, and causing an uproar was one of them. And I still have the document. We were writing them all down. And then as you're checking for, trademark and website, that one was available. And it wasn't until our graphic designer started designing the logo that we realized PR was in Uproar. So Uproar PR was able to kind of come into one word. And so that's worked out well for us over the years.
Well, it certainly describes your company. But now, on the flip side of that, as that said at the opening of the show, small business look at PR, as they say in our focus groups, as an expense that they don't know how to measure what they're getting for it. And first off, I'd like your take on how you tell people we took this money and we did this. How do you measure success?
So I always tell people that public relations is an art, not a science, right? So advertising would be the science if you want to kind of compare them side by side. Advertising, you know what you're buying, you know exactly what it says, when it's going to run, the frequency, and the dollars spent. PR is a little bit more artistic. You may have times where you've got an insane amount of coverage and times where it's slower. But what we're really looking at is how is the sentiment of your users or customers changing over time? Are you getting a larger share of voice out there in the marketplace? And if I'm working with engineers, they don't like what I'm about to tell you next. It's a feeling, right? Your phones are ringing more, your website hits are up, you're busier than you've ever been. And that tends to be what companies tell us is, wow, I didn't believe it when you said I was going to feel it, but I feel it now. And there's a big impact. At the end of the day, PR has to support sales. And so when we take a look at a new client, we sit down and go, okay, let's look at everything from a sales perspective. Who are you selling to, right? By title. How does the decision drive? Does it drive up the chain of command, down the chain of command? What does your sales cycle look like? Are you a product that people make decisions on quickly? They land on your website and they purchase? Or are you a product that they take 6 months to contemplate and think about and look at before they make that decision? From there, we can really develop a plan to hit those customers in their specific personas and what they're reading and what they're doing, so that we can support sales. And at the end of the day, if PR is not driving sales, then it's not doing its job.
Someone said at one of our focus groups that an agency came back to them and said, we got you to touch 1 million people with our PR. And he looked and he said, I couldn't believe it because nothing happened. Touching is not enough. You have to, I'm going to ask you the question. What are some of the things you should be doing for your client? I'll just leave it at that. What should you be doing for your client?
Yeah, you really got to make sure that you're nimble and you're changing your plan on the fly, right? So that what you just said, we hear a lot of, oh, well, we got you into X magazine and it has 500,000 readers. Therefore, 500,000 people saw you. No, that's not accurate, right? So one of the things we really like to do is focus, if it's an e-commerce company or a company with a website that drives a lot of their customers, we can really focus on Google Analytics, right? If we got you a piece of coverage in Forbes magazine in September, did we see a significant increase in coverage or a significant increase in page views in September, right? We want to see that your mountains are coming when press coverage is coming. If we had you on your local ABC station, did we see an increase of traffic locally in that market? And so traffic can really say, okay, this person saw the article, they were a target customer or had interest in your brand, and then they went to the website and took a look. And then from there, we can look at traffic patterns. Did they make a purchase? Did they look at the products? Did they put it in their cart? Did they abandon the cart? Did they exit the site? And so there's all sorts of analytics we can look at to analyze that customer's journey within the company.
Well, someone once told me that PR is really the art of convincing. Do you have any thoughts on that?
The art of convincing. Potentially, I could see where that would be a fit, but we really want to hit the customer who's the target customer, right? So one of the first things we do is a full persona exercise, understanding the competitive landscape. What are their competitors saying, doing, talking about? Who are their target customers, right? And we'll get down very specific. Your target customer is Jane. She's 35. She reads Women's Health. She's a mom. She's a professional, whatever that case might be. And then we're looking at what are the articles that are going to move her into a decision making. So hopefully it's not persuasion, but it's, oh, wow, this is a product I didn't even know I needed. And I'm reading an article in a publication that I trust and know, and I see that product out there.
Oh, let's go into product placement for a minute. Someone once told me that's the toughest part of any PR campaign, getting your product in places where it's not advertising. What do you say to that? And how do you go about doing that?
Yeah. So I really think, you know, the old standard, and I'm not an advertising expert, but the old standard used to be you need to see an ad 6 times before you make a purchasing decision. And I would say with PR, that cuts it in half, right? It's 3 times. So if I'm reading or watching the news from a source that I trust, a news anchor, a writer, an editor, and suddenly they're talking about a product that's of interest to me, I only need that 3 times because I'm seeing that as third-party validation as opposed to the company's own validation with advertising. So I think PR moves the needle faster than an advertising campaign would. Now, those can go hand in hand for sure, right? You might go to the same publications that you're already advertising in, and you can kind of meet them in the middle, right? Maybe it's a 4.5.
Your website for people who want to know more.
Our website,
Your website.
uproarpr.com.
And what is your website again for people who want to know more?
Sure, uproarpr.com. uproarpr.com.
Well, this is a question I always ask people. What should a small business be asking you when they approach you for an assignment?
Yeah. So I think when you hire an agency, an in-house PR person, a freelancer, whatever route you're ready to take, a lot of it's about fit and personality, right? Do they see things the way that you do? I would first ask them, what's their approach, right? How do you approach who I am and talking to my customer base? That's the first thing I'd ask. Second thing I would ask is how they work. You know, are you having regular calls with them so that there's some sort of accountability, or are they calling you when they have something? You know, I would really want that accountability and regular communication. And the other thing I would ask is about the contractual side. You know, are you tying me into a long-term contract? A lot of agencies or PR practitioners will tie you into a 1-year or a 2-year, and inevitably they're slow to get to work and they're doing the work as the contract's coming up for renewal. You know, when we started Uproar, I was a big proponent. I don't want long-term contracts. We simply ask for a 30-day out because the ownership of getting coverage should be on us, right? We should be moving the needle from day one. Of course, there's momentum building, but we should be making sure that we're starting to drive results and have momentum right from the start.
What should you be asking the potential client?
Yeah, we want to know that it's going to be a good fit. Our best clients over the years, as I look back, are ones that really treated us as we were in-house, not an outsourced vendor, right? I'm not the IT guy who comes in when there's a problem, right? I really need to know what's going on. You know, we have companies, we'll even sit in on their staff meetings and we'll do the reporting on PR, because then we can hear from them what's going on inside of the company, right? When the sales team talks about, hey, we're seeing this problem, or this is resonating with customers, we're getting that firsthand. When the marketing team is talking about what they're doing, we're getting that firsthand. So we're asking customers, how will we be seen within your company? How will we be portrayed? What is the chain, right? If we're talking to your head of marketing, is that coming across through the company? Because we really want to be seen as that in-house resource.
I'm sorry, I
Okay.
have this edited out. It always happens when emergency at the same time I'm doing a show. Uh, uh, Tell us now, can you give us a couple of examples where you've helped clients and how you went about it?
Sure. You know, over the years, we've had a number of client wins that have been really exciting to me. I love working with an early stage startup, young company, where you can see that everything you do moves the needle. Of course, working with the later stage companies is great as well, and we do a lot of that work. One company we work with creates jar lids. Let that sit in for a second. Jar lids. That's interesting to come and do a PR campaign. And when they first came to us, we thought, gosh, what do you do for jar lids that's going to move the needle for them? So if you go back to what I talked about a few minutes ago, looking at the personas, looking at their customers, looking at their sales process, what we found out was that this was the first innovation in jar lids in many, many years. And so we were able to take the innovation of a very traditional old company that you'd never even think about innovating and take that first piece of coverage to Forbes. And we got a great article in Forbes. And the client saw a huge increase in web traffic. And so I think the day that article posted, it was something like 80–90% increase in web traffic from new visitors, which is important, right? We want to see that. And we've now been working with them for, I don't know, maybe 5–6 years, and we're constantly able to get those hits that's going to move the needle for them, which is fantastic to watch. You know, others, we see things on a more regular basis. We have a company we work with. They're in the electronic vehicle industry, and just in a short period of time, maybe 1.5–2 years, we had an increase of almost 700% in media coverage, right? So the amount of coverage they were getting out there. And as a result, over that time period, they saw their customer and user base quadruple. So being able to put, you know, those sorts of numbers and insights into what we do makes it all worthwhile, right? It makes you want to go, okay, great. How do we continue to do our job and do our job well so that we can make an impact on these companies and their bottom line?
So you say you're in all industries, but if I come to you, what are the best media sources now? Obviously, podcasts are moving upwards. Magazines are becoming less impactful. Where should a small business be looking for their next client?
Yeah. You know, it depends on what the small business is. If it's a localized business, we're going to look at a lot of local press, right? We work with a small restaurant group that's just in a couple of different markets. And what we really want for them is that local coverage. Who are the entertainment reporters who are covering what to do this weekend? Who's the food reporter at the local paper? Bloggers, podcasters in town, right? If you're a small business that really hits across the country or across the globe, then we're going to look at probably trade magazines. You know, do you sell in the insurance industry? Do you sell in the pizza industry? There's verticals for each one of those markets. And so we're going to just really look at what are the media that their potential customers are reading and take that approach.
What's the most creative PR campaign that you've done that you've liked?
Whoa. I'm going to go back a few years because this one was really fun. We had a client called Robo Games, and Robo Games was basically, I don't know if you ever watched on A&E, the robot wars, where basically people would build robots and then they would fight each other to their death. So Robo Games was that, but in person. And so they came to us and said, listen, we're doing this in-person event. We really want to sell tickets. We have a very target audience that loves us, comes to every event, but we got a bigger venue. We want to sell a lot of tickets. And so we sat down with them in the kickoff meeting. We're like, what do the robots do? Well, one can pour a drink, one can serve, one could kick. We're like, well, what could it kick? It could cook it. It could kick anything. Well, how far could it kick? I don't know. We could juice it up to kick 35–40 yards. All right. So we called the San Francisco 49ers, and we got their kicker to come out and do a robot versus man kicking contest. And we started them at the 25-yard line, and the robot kicked and the kicker kicked. And then we backed him up 5 yards. The robot kicked. And so on we went until eventually, Don, who won? Do you know? The kicker or the robot?
It's amazing how animated you became over that when you obviously really liked it.
It was a lot of fun. You know, and the kicker won, and we had a great deal. Every TV station was out there. The local paper was out there. It was on the front page of the San Francisco Chronicle the next day. And, it was fun. The kicker was, he was just a lot of fun to work with. He was, he said, at least robots aren't going to take my job. He was able to accommodate for the wind and the weather, and the robot wasn't able to do that. So when we can get really creative and have fun like that, that's a good time for us.
Well, difficult question. Have you had a disaster or two that you could share?
Yeah, unfortunately, part of our job is dealing with crisis. And what I always tell companies, and so for all of your listeners, you should be prepared for your crisis. And that can be as simple as writing down, who do we call in the case of a crisis? Who do we want in a room and dealing with that crisis? And it can be anything, right? Thinking about, look, if you've got a physical location, God forbid, there are things that will happen, robberies, shootings. Maybe it's not even to do with you, but it's at your location or in front of your location. For other businesses, it could be, a cyber attack. It could be anything like that. It could be an employee issue. And so, yeah, I've dealt with employees being arrested for domestic violence and being arrested at their place of employment. I've dealt with employees in company vehicles getting in accidents, shootings in locations. So none of those are fun to deal with, but it's all part of the job.
Well, your website one more time for our audience.
It's uproarpr.com, which is uproarpr.com.
We have just a couple of minutes left. What would you like to leave our audience with?
If you're thinking about, should I be doing PR, go out and talk to a couple sources, call a couple of either firms or freelancers and just get a feel for what it is they can do. But for you, it's really about how to think about, at the end of the day, how do I get third-party validation to help me drive sales? And if that's something you can do, then PR could be a good fit for you.
Well, on that note, we say thank you so much for, to me, an illuminating time together. Thank you.
Well, it was my pleasure, Don. Thank you.